I had a child from an affair, and now the man's wife has started reaching out to me. I'm unsure how to handle this situation and what her intentions are. A few years back, I, 26F, got involved with a man, 42M, who I later discovered was married. When we first met and began seeing each other, I had no idea he had a wife. Naturally, I checked his social media, but while he had pictures of his kids, there was no mention or photo of a spouse anywhere. About a month into our relationship, I learned he was married, but he claimed it was a marriage only in name. They supposedly led separate lives and had agreed to stay together for the sake of their kids and business. He explained that his wife primarily managed their business, while he was only financially involved. At the time, I probably knew I shouldn't fully trust his story, but I wanted to believe it. Being in my early 20s, I was drawn to him and perhaps even a bit infatuated. He made me feel incredible, and looking back, I realize I should have walked away then. But I couldn't see it for what it was. I was captivated by his attention, the excitement, and the experiences we shared. It made me feel unique. I was just so naive. I got pregnant about a year into seeing him. I had always been so careful with preventing pregnancy, but during my relationship with him I took stupid risks. I was so high in lust with this guy, it's embarrassing. The things he'd asked me to do, I'd say yes to almost anything, even when I knew it was a bad idea. I was in love with him, or I thought I was. I hadn't intentionally wanted to get pregnant. I would of course dream about being his wife and having a family, but I knew that wouldn't be a possibility while he had this arrangement with his actual wife. I didn't get pregnant on purpose with any intention of him leaving her for me, even if I wished that we could be a real, normal couple. I was surprised by how excited I was to be pregnant with his baby. I wanted that baby once I found out I was pregnant. The thought of carrying this baby of the man I loved was so special to me, but I knew he probably wouldn't feel the same. I told him I was pregnant and he told me I couldn't keep the baby. I expected his reaction, but I was devastated and it hurt me to my core that he didn't feel the same way I did. He offered to pay, to make a whole weekend of it somewhere exciting, WTF, and to buy me something special if I'd just please get rid of the baby. He explained that he didn't want any more kids and that he couldn't openly be a father to another kid when he and his wife were still pretending to be happily married to the outside world. I agreed to do what he wanted and we made plans for him to pick me up and find somewhere out of town to go get it done. I was all packed the night he was going to pick me up, but I started to feel really scared and really unsafe about the whole thing. I took my bag and checked myself into a hotel to hide because I couldn't go with him. I texted him to say I promised to never contact him again and to never name him as the father or go after child support if he'd promised to leave me alone. At first he tried to sweet-talk me into doing what he wanted. When I didn't cave in, he said some very nasty things to me and that I essentially better never contact him again or show up at his door. I have a 2-year-old now. At times, it's been difficult, but overall we are thriving as best we can. I have kept my word about not naming his as the father or requesting child support. His ex-wife recently reached out to me on social media. She's now divorced from him, and she wants to talk. She discovered my involvement and told me that they split 6 months ago. Her reason for contacting me is to give her children the chance to know their half-sibling and for my child to connect with his siblings. This feels a bit unusual to me. I haven't replied to her yet because I'm unsure of how to handle this. How should I respond? I wonder if I'm being selfish by hesitating, especially if she genuinely wants to build a connection between the kids. I can't imagine feeling the same way if I were in her shoes and found out my husband had a child outside our marriage. Update. I posted here 3 weeks ago, and things have only gotten stranger since. A few years back, I had an affair with a married man, which I deeply regret and would never repeat. From the start, I knew it was wrong, but he drew me in. I was inexperienced and allowed myself to believe him when he said his marriage was just on paper for the kids' sake. I became pregnant, and while he tried to pressure me into an abortion, I ultimately chose to keep the baby. I now have a 2-year-old son. I promised him I wouldn't reveal our affair, officially name him as the father, or request child support. I felt that, given how unpleasant things had become and how I felt by the end, a clean break with no ties to him would be best. So, I moved back to my family, hundreds of miles away from him and his family. About a month ago, his ex-wife messaged me on social media, saying they'd divorced 6 months earlier and wanted our children to have a chance to know each other. Their kids are teenagers, so it seemed unlikely they'd want anything to do with a toddler or the woman their father had an affair with. It all felt strange. After posting here, I decided not to reply to her and just ignore it. She only sent one message, so it wasn't as though she was pressuring me to talk or meet. On Friday night I decided to message her. I don't really know why. I think it was really just for my sake so I could have the chance to apologize to her. I told her that I would be more comfortable speaking with her face to face since I couldn't trust that it was really her. She said she understood. I was too nervous to meet her in person, but we did a video chat. I didn't know what to expect, if this was all a ploy just to unleash her fury on me or what. I mean, I'd deserve that. She wouldn't be wrong to feel that way. It was really her. She told me she discovered our affair when she found communications between the two of us, after our relationship had ended. She told me I'm one of many women he had affairs with over the years and she knew about somebody even before he met me, but she didn't divorce him at the time. Finding out about my child was the final straw for her. I told her I was sorry for my relationship with her husband and admitted that I knew he was married. She graciously told me she forgives me and that while she harbored a lot of anger towards me initially, she ultimately blames her husband. I'm not blameless, but she chooses to not hate me, essentially. She said she couldn't have said this 6 months ago or a year ago when she first found out about me, but she has moved past that. She still has anger toward him, in addition to many other emotions surrounding him. She started pouring out her heart to me about their 20-plus-year marriage and life together and it was very awkward because what do I even say? Her kids know about me and my son. She says they're very mad at their father. Somehow I don't think they're mad about the fact that he's not involved with my son's life. And why would they be mad about that? I would hate me if I were them. I told her with my son being so little right now, I don't really feel comfortable with him meeting her kids or being involved with their family. I feel unsure about it and it's just not something I feel needs to happen right now. Then she told me her ex-husband was in a bad accident 2 months ago. He's fine now, still not allowed to return to all his normal activities just yet, but will be fine. He is probably the most physically active person I've ever met, barely ever seems to sit down, so he must be terribly annoying to be around if he's not allowed to go all the time. She told me he wants to meet my son. Apparently she moved back in with him temporarily when he first came home from the hospital. She said the accident really shook him up and he has been expressing a lot of regret about my son, not being involved, not providing for him. Now I'm wondering if everything she said was a lie and if he somehow convinced her to reach out on his behalf. Could she really have gone along with that? At first, talking to her was almost a relief, but then I started questioning whether any of it was genuine or if she was just acting as his messenger. I'm not even sure what's true anymore. Why wouldn't he just reach out to me himself? I'm left feeling really uneasy about the whole situation now. Update. I posted about this a few months ago. To quickly recap, right after college, I had an affair with a married man who had kids, and I ended up getting pregnant. He wanted me to have an abortion and even planned a getaway for us where I would go through with it. Though I wasn't completely sure about my decision, I agreed to go along with his plan. But at the last minute, as he was on his way to pick me up, I realized I couldn't go through with it. Something about how he was arranging everything made me uneasy, and I felt deeply uncomfortable. That moment made me see just how far I'd gone with this mistake and how messed up the entire situation was. He was really mad. He threatened me, said a lot of nasty things to me. I told him if he just left me alone and let me have my baby then I'd leave him alone and wouldn't name him as the father or seek child support. I moved back home, I was living in a different state when I met him. I kept my word and I did name him as the father or seek to establish paternity. I have never sought child support. My child is 2 now. A few months ago his wife contacted me via social media. At first she made it seem like she wanted my child to have the opportunity to know his siblings. It was sort of weird since the siblings are teenagers. She said she had divorced him 6 months prior. I agreed to talk to her virtually, not in person. I felt that I owed it to her to apologize for what I had done. I do feel bad about it. But at the end of the conversation I told her that I didn't feel it was the appropriate time to connect my son with her kids. He's a toddler in their teens, plus I had promised her husband to stay out of his life. That's when she told me that he was recently in a bad accident and she had been helping to take care of him. Supposedly he was going to be fine and was fairly recovered at that point, but she said he had expressed interest to meet our child. So she was basically his messenger. I have not been in contact with her since then. I deleted my social media. I don't know why, but the whole thing just really made me uncomfortable. Since I last posted here. Then, I received a handwritten letter from him. In it, he expressed how he wanted to get to know our son, he wants to be a father to our son, he wants to provide financially for him, he'd like us to come visit him. He asked me to sign a paternity affidavit. I refused to do so. I know he is my son's father, but I'm not going to make this that easy for him. After the things he said to me and threatened me with, he at least has to work for this. At that point, my parents felt that we needed to meet with a lawyer. All communication from me has gone through a lawyer. I have never responded to him personally/directly. Now, I have a court order for paternity. I have to present my son to have a specimen taken tomorrow. I already know what it's going to say. It's not that I don't want my son to have a dad in his life. It's just, the whole situation is a mess. And he lives a few states away from me. I don't know what to do. I can't really do anything. He's doing things legally. Next, I'm sure he'll petition for some form of custody or visitation. He's not married anymore, supposedly, but he's a lot more established than I am. He has considerably more financial resources. I also know he has all sorts of connections where he lives. Luckily they don't hold as much weight here in my state, but it's still so scary to me. I'm a bad mom. I brought my son into this world knowing it was a messy situation. I just got so comfortable with it just being the two of us, and now I don't want to give that up. Update. I won't go over everything again here, you can find my previous posts on my profile. Briefly, I got pregnant during an affair with a married man. He wanted me to have an abortion, but I decided against it. When I made that choice, he became hostile, so I promised not to legally name him as the father or seek child support. I moved back to my hometown, about 12 hours away from him and his family, and haven't contacted him in over 3 years. Out of nowhere, his ex-wife reached out to me on social media, saying she wanted our children to get to know each other. When I politely declined, noting that her children are teenagers while my son is still a toddler and we live far apart, she then admitted she was actually contacting me on her ex-husband's behalf. She said he'd had a change of heart about being involved in our son's life after a near-fatal accident. I didn't engage with her further, as the whole situation made me feel very uneasy. Later, I received a letter from him in the mail. He asked to be involved with our son, to provide for him, etc. It still felt weird. I mean, he turned really mean and didn't want anything to do with me or our baby and hadn't made any attempt to contact me in years, and I was not hiding. His wife was obviously able to find me on social media and you can find my address online. I felt like if he was serious, he'd take the steps to establish paternity legally. And that's what he did. Around 1.5 months ago we were ordered to submit DNA samples for a paternity test. It took around 5 weeks to find out what I already knew it'd say. But now things are stalled for another several weeks for the next step in the court process. I haven't talked to him at all during this whole thing. I didn't respond directly to his letter. I do have a lawyer and everything is basically going through him now. Then without any warning, he just showed up at my home last weekend. Just knocked on the door like it was nothing. Basically, this is his son and he doesn't want to wait another 6 weeks for the court to inevitably order us into some sort of custody mediation anyway, his words. Why can't I just talk to him? I told him he made me uncomfortable and him just showing up at my house really made me uncomfortable. Honestly, I don't know what made me so uncomfortable. The fact that he showed up unannounced like that, or the fact that I instantly felt the same attraction to him that I had when I was with him and I didn't want to feel that at all. In some weird way part of me felt happy to see him and then another part of me was disgusted that I was happy. He said he doesn't understand why we can't just talk about this. He's not trying to take my son away from me, he just wants to be involved in his life and to help provide for him like he should have been all along. He's sorry he wasn't there when he was born. He's sorry he reacted the way that he did when I didn't go along with his plans to take me on an abortion vacation. Why can't I believe that he just wants to be a dad to his kid? I guess I agree with him. Why can't I just accept that he has had a change of heart? I can't trust myself. I can't trust my own judgment. I feel like if I easily let him into my son's life I'm going to end up regretting it and be made a fool of somehow. I've already made so many mistakes when it comes to him. He says it's stupid of me to not try to work it out amongst ourselves first. I'm giving so much control to the court. I don't know whether to believe that or to think it's just his way of convincing me to do what he wants. I know he will get some sort of visitation and eventual custody. Maybe it would be better if we try to come to an agreement, but he had the ability to sway me so easily. I'm so stupid when it comes to him. Nobody else has ever made me feel so foolish in my life. I want my son to have a dad. I admit it's probably selfish of me to want to keep him away. I just keep imagining having to spend weeks or months apart from my child while he's living with his dad 12 hours away and I can't stand the thought of it. I'm just feeling sad, stupid, and defeated. Update. Since people were upset about my previous recap, I'll skip the details here. If you're curious about the backstory, feel free to check out my prior posts. In short, I have a 3-year-old son from an affair with a married man. After our son was born, he insisted I not contact him, identify him as the father, or seek child support. Now, however, he has been trying for months to become involved in our son's life. Despite living several states away, he recently showed up at my house, attempting to convince me to resolve things directly with him. Since the last time I posted, we've recently had a mediation session and he's met our son twice. At this time, he will have supervised visitation, with me present. Because he lives states away, he is required to come here to see our son. It will not be on a weekly basis due to the travel. He will see him during 2 weeks of the month, 2 times each week, for a total of 4 visits a month plus 2 video calls a month. This will last for 6 months. The next step will be for him to continue that schedule, but to have unsupervised visitation during which he cannot remove him from the area, for another 6 months. After a year, we agree to have another mediation session to determine next steps, with the goal, his goal, of being able to have my son at his home for short overnights. I'm not even ready to discuss that. He's already suggesting I can come for the first few times. I don't like the sound of it at all. We also have the option to request another mediation before 1 year and something tells me he's going to pull that. I also have an order for child support. While he is in agreement with paying child support, it will have to work through the court system before becoming official and for me to start getting the regular payment. He wrote me a large check in the meantime. I was hesitant to accept it. Not that I don't think my son deserves it, but now I'm just always worried I'll say or do the wrong thing legally, completely unknowingly, and shoot myself in the foot. Like, am I obligated myself and my son to anything by accepting this check? Can he somehow spin this against me? Of course he was not in favor of the 6-month/6-month plan, and while he does understand that my son should not just go off with a stranger upon first meeting him, he wishes we could speed it along a little more, but 6 months was what we were able to agree on. He wanted to fly us both to where he lived so he could spend a week or 2 getting to know our son, but I don't feel that's appropriate at this time. Perhaps in a few months, or around the holidays, depending on how things are going. It would be too much too soon. The initial 2 meetings went pretty much just as I thought they would. My son is extremely shy. He wanted to hide behind me most of the time. Then when he would venture out from behind me, as soon as his dad would say anything to him, he would scurry back behind me and just stare at his dad blankly without saying anything. He came out of his shell a little bit, however he has still not said a single word to his dad. He just pretends like his dad isn't there and only talks to me. I will say that his dad is being patient and understanding as far as that goes. If he's frustrated, he's not showing it. He did suggest that maybe our son needs to get out more, go to daycare more of even preschool instead of spending so much time with me and my parents. He's very delighted with how much our son looks like him and how much he favors him over me. The one thing that did bother me is that I already told him I wanted to be very careful and mindful of how we informed our son, this little barely 3-year-old boy, that this man/complete stranger is his dad. He said, "Sure, yeah." Then at the first meeting he introduced himself as Dad. Since then I've been trying to help my son understand. Like, you know how your grandpa is my daddy, this guy is your daddy. It's so surreal to me that any of this is happening. I feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm waiting for something to blow up in my face. Now, it's just working on accepting our new reality. All of this change is hard and confusing for my son, and it's hard for me. Unless he really fucks up, I'm looking at eventually shared times with my son, spending school breaks and holidays at his dad's house, hours and hours away in another state. It won't happen tomorrow, but it will happen in the most likely reality. I just hope he stays committed. If he can be a good dad to my child, then my child deserves that, no matter how sad sharing him makes me. If he breaks my son's heart, that'll be another story, and I won't accept that so readily. Update. It's been 3 weeks since my last post and just over a month since our new visitation arrangement began. I've noticed many people here saying how foolish I am, but I don't really get it. What am I doing now that's so dumb? I realize it was a mistake to have a long-term affair with a married man and irresponsible to put myself in a position where I could become pregnant. That's all in the past. What exactly am I doing now that's so wrong? I have legal representation. Yes, I agreed to speak with his wife once. How was I to know she was acting on his behalf? Who could have predicted that? It wasn't even an in-person meeting, just a video call. I thought I owed her at least that one conversation and an apology for what I did. But ultimately it felt off, and I protected my son by telling her I didn't think it was appropriate at this time for me and my 2 years old to travel to another state to meet her teenage kids. It's not as if talking to her opened the door for him to reach out to me. I was careful with what info I shared with her. It's not as if I told her my address. He didn't need her to gather that info from me. Me talking to her isn't what prompted him to contact me directly and establish paternity. When he reached out to me directly about wanting to be involved with our son, I didn't reach out to him and decide to discuss things directly with him. I got a lawyer. When he showed up at my house, I didn't let him inside. I put my son in his room, so he didn't eventually see our son or have access to him. I'm listening to my lawyer. I met with him in a mediation, and I am trying to make careful decisions for my son. There is nothing I can do to prevent him from having access to our son. The court will grant him access if I fight it. At least this way I have a say in the arrangement. We are supposed to be using a parenting app. Since the last time I posted, he's reached out to me outside of the app. Now, he keeps talking about us coming there to visit him. I have told him no. It's not appropriate. It's too much too soon. He's also already started talking about changing my son's last name to his, but you know, maybe in a year or so. He tries to have personal conversations with me, not always about our son. I have shut those down and referred him back to the parenting app. He thinks using the app is stupid and is only for people who can't get along. He thinks it'd be better for our son if we got along and got to know each other again. He cares about me and what's going on in my life, or so he says. I also didn't cash the check he gave me, I sent it back. If he wants to provide additional financial support beyond his court-ordered child support, he can buy things our son needs, but I won't accept any cash or checks from him. My lawyer actually advised that cashing the check wouldn't impact child support arrangements. Still, knowing his tendency to manipulate, I felt uncomfortable, suspecting he might use it against me in court later. I would have appreciated the extra money, it could have been helpful, but I returned it through certified mail, which definitely frustrated him. His plan backfired. I can see he's trying to charm me for a reason. I'm not sure exactly why, but I'm not naive enough to fall for it. New update. I'm not able to post further updates in Troofmicast, so I'm sharing this on my profile. Not sure if anyone will see it, but I suspect someone reposted my story elsewhere because I suddenly started receiving messages asking for an update, even though it's been nearly 2 months since my last post. It's been 2 more months of this, 2 months of him messaging me, half about our son and half about other things. Despite having a parenting app, he can't seem to stick to it. Every other day, he texts me directly, "How's our son?" followed by, "You good though? Need anything?" Recently, he's also started sending packages for our son. The latest one arrived a few days ago, filled with toys, books, and clothes. At first, I was skeptical, thinking it might be another tactic. But when I looked closer, I saw the effort put into it: age-appropriate books, clothes that actually fit, and toys my son genuinely liked. It seemed thoughtful, whether from him or whoever helped him shop. Hopefully not his poor ex-wife. For a brief moment, I could see him genuinely trying to be a father, and a small part of me appreciated that. Still, I'm careful. I'm not letting my guard down. The good gestures are mixed with moments that make me feel uneasy. He mentioned, again, that, maybe in a year or so, we should talk about changing my son's last name. I don't know why he keeps bringing it up. He acts like it's no big deal, like it's just something we'll agree on eventually. On the other hand, I can't deny that having him show up consistently with child support and gifts has taken some pressure off me. He's contributing in ways that actually help. My son seems happy with the things he's sent. And while I don't want to rely on it, it's nice not to worry about buying new clothes every month. The biggest challenge right now is finding balance. How do I acknowledge the good things he's doing without letting my guard down too much? How do I protect my son from getting hurt if he loses interest or starts pushing too hard again? I'm still following my lawyer's advice, still documenting everything. But the dynamic is changing, and I'm trying to keep up. For now, I'm taking things day by day. Some moments feel peaceful, like maybe this arrangement could work. Other moments, I feel the weight of what's coming. He'll keep pushing for more time, for overnights, for a bigger role. He thinks it's unfair if I don't let him spend more time with our son during the holidays. He was practically throwing a temper tantrum about it. If I won't go to him, then he can rent an Airbnb and we can stay together. What? Why would we do that? He'll see him in December during his regularly scheduled visit. So then he called me a narcissistic, paranoid parent who just wants our son all to myself, and that I'm psychologically damaging him by not forcing him to go 0 to 60 playing happy family with a completely stranger overnight. The thing is, he has a way of saying it that makes me start to believe it, and then I'm worrying if I'm really being that way. I don't know why he can't just act like a normal, patient, understanding adult person. I'm cooperating, and I know their level of contact and time will increase gradually. That's the key word, gradually. I'm not even trying to prevent that, but I just can't agree with this idea he has of just acting like he hasn't been completely uninvolved for almost 3 years. He's also trying to bribe me with money again, but I'm not referring to the court-ordered child support. He asked how much debt I had, and I refused to tell him. He kept pressing me to disclose the amount, claiming he'd consider paying it off for me. "Come on, let me help you," he said. But it doesn't feel like genuine help from the kindness of his heart. He insists there are no strings attached, but I'm sure there are. He'll likely expect something in return, like my agreeing to change our son's name or allowing a custody arrangement that makes me uncomfortable. I do have a significant amount of debt that stresses me out, and while I've thought about accepting his offer, not when it means risking my son. He mentioned he could find out my debt amount if I didn't tell him, and that he knows more about me than I realize. I hope that's just him trying to intimidate me. It seems more like empty threats and silly talk. Still, he's starting to sound more like his old self, so much for that accident changing him for the better. He's managed to fool me at times. Ultimately, it's not money or material things that would matter to me. What would truly mean something is a sincere apology for threatening my life. Little things like that, which he completely ignores and brushes aside, would carry much more weight, but only if it was truly genuine.